Hello, my name is Szymanski. I'm the chef and owner of Dame restaurant in Greenwich Village, and I'm here today to make Scotch eggs. Scotch eggs are like a very traditional British pub snack. It's at its core a soft or hard-boiled egg wrapped in some kind of filling, like normally meat, pork, sausage traditionally, but can be anything. So I'm gonna show you how to make some proper ones today that are nice. The first step is to boil the eggs. We want them somewhere in between soft boiled and hard boiled. So like anywhere between 5.5 and 6.5 minutes. And then start a timer for 5 minutes and 50 seconds. You know, it's important when you're cooking the eggs not to have them like at a super rolling boil, but also like don't turn it off and let them just sit there. Once you reach your time, like the first egg, dump into the ice water. We're gonna crack it. You're gonna lose this egg. This is kind of the perfect texture. It's like just set on the outside, but jammy on the inside. Ice water is important because when you finish cooking the eggs, you want to stop the cooking process straight away. Otherwise, they'll continue and they'll turn into hard-boiled eggs. It's called shocking, so shock the eggs. And give them like a minute or so to cool down, and then we'll peel them. When you're peeling the eggs, tap them a little bit all around. It's like a lot easier to peel them off in little chunks than one big chunk. Just peel it into the same ice water you have. You can keep dipping the egg and rinsing it off. You sort of have to like say a little prayer to the egg gods before you start doing this, because sometimes they just don't love you. You can definitely get away with serving these if there's like a little bit of the white chipped off, unless the Michelin inspector's coming to your house that evening. Like I wouldn't worry about it too much, but try and keep it as intact as possible. It's a Scotch egg, it's not like just fried sausage patty, so you want the egg in it too. Excellent. It's fine, I got a notepad full of these. I don't. Now we have the eggs peeled, we're gonna make the sausage patty that'll go around the outside of the egg. We're gonna make a curried version of one using curry powder, Worcestershire sauce, a little garlic, onion, and some butter and some thyme. But you can really put in any flavor profile you want here as long as it, sort of makes sense with the meat you're using. Melt the butter. We'll chop half an onion. The other half of the onion we're gonna save for the yogurt sauce. You kinda wanna chop the onion like pretty fine so you don't get huge chunks of onion on the outside of your filling. Cook it gently in the butter for a little while just to soften it up. Peel the ginger with a spoon. You're gonna chop up a little bit of ginger, make it aromatic. English food now is very seasonal, which is something like people do think of it as just cabbage and Brussels sprouts and like overcooked pot roast, which is not true anymore. I think it was true in like an older generation, but now it's like a very vibrant international restaurant community. I want people to realize that it's not the same stodgy old food that they had when they like visited the UK. Split the garlic in half to remove some of the germ. And like cook it so that this should be pretty soft. You don't want like hard veggies in the middle. And it's fine if the butter browns a little bit. You sort of want that because we're gonna toast the spices in it in a second. Pick a couple of these. And then the curry powder. Toast the curry powder in the hot butter with the onion so it's like nice and aromatic. Add some of your thyme. And then when you deglaze the Worcestershire sauce, it'll stop the cooking process. And that's kind of the texture you want. It's a paste. You don't want it to be too liquidy because you're gonna have a hard time breading the pork if you add a lot of liquid to it. And so pour that into the bowl and let it chill. Now the curry paste is a little colder, we're gonna mix it with the pork. To make sure it's incorporated evenly, and then we're gonna season it too. Then a little salt. Because the eggs don't really get seasoned from the inside, it's important to like kind of season the pork pretty heavily. You definitely don't have to eat raw pork to taste it. Like you can cook a little bit off if you want and see if it's, has the right salt. But this is what the mix should look like sort of like a brown homogeneous mass, which is the name of my upcoming cookbook. It's not. And now we'll use this to wrap the eggs. It's easiest to do this in between 2 sheets of cling film. You're sort of forming meatballs with them, 6 little patties. And then, using the other bit of cling film, press it down, form it kind of thin, and then pop the egg right in the middle. And then using the cling film, wrap it over the egg. Get the filling on it in a relatively even way. And you don't have to get it perfect the first time, because you're gonna be able to fill in any bits that aren't covered with the sausage patty with your hands. Tap it around and shape the egg so that it looks like an egg, because it's a little weird if you have a Scotch rectangle. When you're breading and frying the eggs, you need 1 bowl for the flour, 1 bowl for the egg and the milk, and then 1 bowl for the breadcrumbs. The panko, you won't do anything for 2, just put that all in here. Flour, AP flour's fine, in your bowl, and then crack 2 eggs and 150 grams of milk or so. You got like a dry thing, a wet thing, and a dry thing. You want to use one hand for the dry things and the other hand for the wet things. Gently, with your hand, pick up the first egg, like roll it in the flour, cover it, but you don't want it to be particularly floury. Then into the wet, again being gentle this whole time, then into the breadcrumbs. I feel like I'm carrying a baby or something because it's still jiggly on the inside. Not that I don't like walk around carrying other people's babies. I don't really know what that's like. Take the last few breadcrumbs you have and just go over the top, because whilst it's chilling, it'll stop the top layer of breadcrumbs from drying out too much. That can go in the fridge. So dipping sauce mix, mayonnaise, and I say sour cream or yogurt? And yogurt. Or yogurt if you're in America. Yogurt if you're English. And it's an English recipe, so I don't know how the Scotch say it. Mix them like 50-50. The sauce is got to be kind of thick and have quite a lot of acid and punch to it to counterbalance the richness of the Scotch eggs, but with some freshness too. So we're going to chop up some chives, will go in there. And a little bit of the red onion too. We'll chop the onion kind of fine. So a little bit of minced onion in there too. And just mix it all together. I should be a chef. The most important part before you start frying the eggs is like pick out a vintage old plate that your grandma gave you that has like some English China company on the back. So you have something cute to plate it on. And then fry the Scotch eggs. The oils are 320. Just lower them in very gently because, you know, oil burns, not fun for anyone. They'll fry for like 5 to 6 minutes. You need the pork to be cooked through, and you need the egg to be warm, and you need the outside to be golden brown, all at the same time. This is like a chef's best friend. It's called a cake tester. If you use a meat thermometer, you pierce the inside of the egg, the yolk, and it'll start to run out, which you do not want. So this is a much more delicate way of doing that. You can like stick it in and then touch it to your lip to check. Nearly there. The lip is a very sensitive part of your body, so I'm like testing it against that to see the temperature. You don't want it to burn you, because that means it's all getting pretty overcooked, but you want it to be a little warmer than a piece of metal is at room temperature. We pull them out, and we'll season them with the flaky salt. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. So the eggs are like the jammy texture. Sausage meat's cooked, the breadcrumb's like kind of a thin layer of shell on the outside. The egg is like warm on the inside and jammy and fatty. Mixes great with the pork. That contrast of like soft pork sausage and the crunchy on the outside. And then the yogurt sauce really brings the whole thing together. It's like creamy and acidic. It's really delicious. So for the recipe, click the link below. If you're in New York, come visit me at Dame. I'm McDougal Street in Greenwich Village. Thank you for having me. How many Scotch eggs have the royal family eaten combined over the years? People doing fancy versions of Scotch eggs for the Queen. And like all she wants is just like the shitty stuff you get in the supermarket. It's definitely not interesting, whatever the Queen likes.